Welcome back to DDRP. I'm Dakota.
And I'm Bryson.
In our last video, we finished taking apart the front brakes and suspension on our 1966 Dodge Dart 270 convertible. Quite a long time to do that because we were taking pictures and learning along the way, researching parts and taking notes. And now that the front brakes and suspension are finished and removed, it's time to rebuild.
That's right. So this car being from the 1960s, it's almost a 60-year-old car right now. And so a lot of the components like the rubber is cracked and breaking, especially like the bushings and things like that. Bushings are basically a cushion of rubber that the car uses on suspension components that help it ride smoothly. And when it's cracked and broken, it can cause noise and squealing, and it can really compromise the handling of the car. Fortunately, the previous owner had obtained a lot of new and used parts that are compatible with Mopar A-body cars. And so as we were taking inventory and cataloging everything that we got from the previous owner, much of the front suspension and rear suspension components were already there. So some of the parts that we already had included some parts from we believe it's a 1973 Dodge Dart. So they included the upper control arms with a larger upper ball joint opening, and they already had new bushings installed on them. We also had lower control arms, spindles, or also called knuckles, and rotors with the 5 lug by 4.5 inch bolt pattern. So it's a larger bolt pattern. There were some single piston brake calipers, brake pads, brake hoses, and also some new strut bar bushings and torsion bar grease boots that are compatible and fit with the 66.
Having all those parts helps save us a bunch of money. We've seen drum brake conversion kits to disc brake conversion kits go for as much as $1,600. When we got the car and all the extra parts for $3,500, it's gonna be a little absurd. Which brings us to our next question. Are you going for show quality? And we'd love to do that, but it would take way more time and money than we're going to put in right now. Basically, anything that's mechanically important and visual will get our attention. It'll be a nice daily driver when it's done though.
Absolutely. So we didn't have all the parts that we needed to finish the rebuild on the car. So again, I spent a lot of time looking online at different big box stores and eBay and other things like that. We found some of the parts at stores like AutoZone, but surprisingly, a lot of the parts that I found for the car came from Napa Auto Parts. So besides them, eBay has been the biggest contributor to the extra parts that we needed to finish up the rebuild of the front end. So I'll do my best to link the products that we purchased in the description, but for now, we just hope you enjoy the video. We're out working on the Dart again. In front of you are seeing the upper control arms that came off of the Dodge Dart. Say hi, Dakota.
Hi.
So the problem with these ones is that this is where the upper ball joints were, but we're not going to use these ones because the ball joints are too small. We're doing a disc brake upgrade to a larger bolt pattern. That's pretty common with these older cars. A better disc brake is always better. So what we're doing is I've removed these ones, and over here Dakota is working on a larger, this is from a 73 Dart. You can just see the different size of the upper ball joint opening there. So what we're doing right now is we are cleaning them up so that we can paint them. So we're removing all the dirt, all the dust, all the grime, and then we will be painting these kind of a black gloss color. But you can see the difference as we've been cleaning them in the parts washer over here, and also using some wire brushes, which Dakota's showing you right there, using some wire brushes to clean all the dirt, the rust, and the grime off of there. And you can see that it's looking pretty good. So when it's all said and done, it should be like brand new. So that's the upper control arms. All right, so in front of us right now, we've got the lower control arms that were removed from the Dart. I have another set of control arms that we're going to install. We believe that the upper and lower control arms that we received from the previous owner, the ones we're going to install, are from either a 1970 or a 1973 Dodge Dart. But for just purposes today, I'm going to show you what we're going to do to rebuild the lower control arms that we have. So, a couple of things. So first of all, I want to show you this. Right here, you can see it. This is called the pivot shaft. And right around that pivot shaft, there is a rubber bushing. And it's all cracked and dried out. So I purchased a kit that came with a replacement bump stop, replacement pivot shaft, the entire bearing that goes around there, and then a strengthening plate. It's basically a steel plate that can be welded onto this section of the lower control arm to add some strength. Really don't need it, but the kit comes with it, and I figured why not, we'll just go ahead and use it. So, and while I have it off here as well, there's actually the torsion bar adjuster goes in right here, and this is what it adjusts. So if you remember from the previous video right here, from a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that the torsion bar comes into this socket right here, and that adjuster moves this up. So you can see that that's what causes that torsion bar to add some spring to it. So anyway, we're replacing that, the bushings, the pivot shaft, we have new screws for the torsion bar adjuster, and there's a little piece that goes in there for it as well. We're going to replace all of that. So just wanted to explain that. Now, one of the main difficulties of these Mopar A bodies and these lower control arms is that this opening right here in the back is smaller than the opening in the front. So normally you would use a press to press out a bushing, but because the opening is smaller on the back side and wider or bigger on the front end, you can't just press it out. So that's kind of one of the Achilles heels of these lower control arms. So there's two methods that I know of to remove them. So I actually took my lower control arms to a mechanic who took an air chisel. He removed the pivot shaft, and he took an air chisel and just chiseled out this bushing right here. Another method is you can get a really thick washer like this, and you can weld it once this pivot shaft is removed. I watched this on a YouTube video. You can weld it to this bushing, and once it's welded, then you can press it out from the back end, right? Because it's got more meat to press it out with. So those are the two methods that I've seen to remove those bushings, but it's really difficult to do on your own. So that's why this is the first thing, one of the only times so far that I've actually taken parts to a mechanic to help get it all taken care of. So anyway, just wanted to explain those couple of things, those couple of points. So once we get all the new parts done, obviously the new ones we've already cleaned up, removed all the rust and grime, and we're using some black spray paint. I'm going to link in the description all the parts that we're using to rebuild the lower control arms and the upper control arms, etc. But we used some AutoZone HVT black chassis and roll bar paint for these parts right here. So we'll show you what that looks like when it's all done. So up until this point, we've been disassembling a lot, mostly the front suspension. But today, we actually began reinstalling some after rebuilding parts. So we'll take a look right now. So what we're looking at now is partially reassembled front suspension. So what we did today was we installed the strut rod, this lower control arm right here, upper control arm, camber bolts, upper ball joint, spindle, replace the tie rod, and then it's kind of back here, hard to see, but right here is the torsion bar that goes all the way back. That one was fun to do. So we've got this reassembled, and painted the wheel well black as well, so it doesn't look so rusty and dirty, and cleaned it as best we could. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So just to show you what it looks like on the other side. So wheel well is painted, but we've got to replace this lower tie rod, and then we've got to reassemble all the parts the exact same way that we did on the other side. So you ready, Dakota?
Uh-huh.
Let's get to it.
Okay.
All right, so Dakota's going to walk us through everything that's going to be installed today. Go for it.
So first, we need to install the bump stop. And then after that, we're going to install the upper control arm with the camber bolts. After we install the camber bolts right here and right here, we're going to install the ball joint in the middle right here. After that, we're going to install the lower control arm, then the strut rod, and finally the shock absorber. We're going to install the nickel, and then the tie rod, and then the caliper adapter piece, then the dust shield, and then the rotor. It seals, and then we're going to need to install the caliper and cotter pins, and then the disc brake pads, and finally the pushing bar, which takes a lot of time.
All right, let's get at it.
Woohoo!
Another thing that's kind of interesting is, let's see if I can get a good angle on it. Underneath here, you might be able to see it, there is a boot, a grease boot that connects to the bottom of the K-member there. And I'll tell you a funny story about that. Okay, so funny story time. So up until now, most of the parts on the car haven't been too difficult to remove or anything like that, right? And even putting it back together seemed to go pretty well. But there was one thing in particular, the torsion bar, that has offered some difficulties. So thought we'd tell this real quick. So the torsion bar is a very long bar. It's the suspension on the car. On either end, there's this hex head, right? So you've got a long shaft and then a hex head. Well, the problem is that there's a grease boot that goes over at a certain part of the torsion bar. So this is an example of the grease boot. You can see how it's got a narrow front and it gets bigger. This is the part where it actually attaches to the frame of the car. But the problem is that this opening right here is really too small to go over that hex head. So number one, I was having a bear of a time trying to get this grease boot over the head of the torsion bar. And Mr. Chuckles over here just kept laughing at me as I was trying to get it on. So I got wise and I tried to find a socket that was as big as the torsion bar head. And then I put the grease boot, basically shoved it through the socket through there, and then tried to quickly transition it over to the torsion bar. But I failed probably 10 times. Like, it was really hard to do, but finally got it on. The other problem is that I had to do this under the car, right? So there's a part where the torsion bar goes into the underside of the frame. And so I'm underneath the car, pinned down by the exhaust. It's like sitting on my face. I'm trying to get this over the head and he's just laughing at me the whole time. And then when I'm trying to get this attached to the frame, same thing, like it won't go on. I can get one side on, but then it slips off and Dakota's he's holding the flashlight and laughing and it's waving all over the place while I'm trying to do this. Well, finally I got wise and used a screwdriver to kind of give me some leverage all the way around as I'm putting it on, and finally got it done. But that was more difficult than I was expecting. And I was like, Dakota, do you want to try and do this? And what did you say?
I said no.
He said no. So I got to do it both on my side and on his side. But
Thankfully, the second or on the passenger side, it was easier.
yes, now that I knew what I was doing, it went a little bit quicker. But other than that, Dakota has done probably 90% of the work all by himself without help from Dad on his side of the car. So kudos to him. And hopefully nothing will be as difficult as those torsion bar grease boots. So that's that.
And this is the completed rebuild of the disc brake and suspension.